And good evening and welcome to a Monday night live stream where tonight's topic is going to be deep and meaningful. And talking about deep and meaningful, I have my beautiful cat here beside me, keeping me company tonight. The live stream I did, and she's yawning already, thank you for that. The live stream I did last night was did prove to me that Sunday night live streams were not particularly of interest to anyone. So I don't think I'll do Sunday night live streams anymore. But I've had people watching on Monday nights before, so let's see who comes on. We've got Rose and Gloria and Annie and Swati. Thank you for joining. And we'll just wait for a couple more people to come on whilst I do a product placement for Vegan Life. And hope you guys have had a good day today. And Helen, thank you for joining. And hello, Helen, how are you? And just wait for a couple more people to come online. It's been rather good weather here on the Gold Coast. And what's it been like where you guys have been? Has it been good? So we'll see if a few more people come online. And while I'm waiting for a few more people to come online, remember tomorrow night is episode 23, tomorrow night of the Vegan Hour. And that promises to be very interesting because I'll be talking to the young owner of the Fully Vegan Familiar Takeaway tomorrow night, Sam Elliott. He'll be talking about vegan businesses, sustainable vegan businesses. And Venice has joined me all the way from Victoria. What's the weather like down there in Victoria, Venice? Tonight I will be talking about what impresses you the most, and I will want to find out from you what impresses you the most. I'll be talking about what impresses me the most, and I'll be talking about what I believe really matters in life. So Helen says very warm in Mackay. Hi Venice. Yes, I imagine it would be, Helen. It would have been quite warm here today had it not been for the wind sort of keeping the temperature down to reasonable. So, okay, we've got a few people watching, so let's get this live stream happening. So thank you for watching, and thank you for anyone that's watching this later, and I'll probably even upload it to YouTube later because I tend to forget to do that at times, but anyway. I just had some time tonight. Wow, 30 degrees in Melbourne, Venice says. That's a bit warmer than it was here today on the Gold Coast. That's pretty impressive. Okay, so what impresses you the most? Now, feel free to have a think about that and to comment on that as I'm doing this live stream tonight, and as I'm going, and give me any feedback about what I talk about, because I'm going to be talking about what impresses me the most and why I'm doing this live stream. It basically came about, and Sarah, thank you for watching. It basically came about because I was reading an article a couple of days ago from an Australian media personality, and she made an interesting comment in the article that started me thinking about what impresses me with people, the sort of people that I'm impressed by, the sort of character traits that that impress me. So she made a comment in the article. Here we go. Look at the tail. Oh, that was the tail went real quick. If just off camera here. If I had the zoom feature enabled, would you believe it? I haven't got the zoom feature enabled, so I can't. There's the tail. It's a cat. I can't zoom, so I can't. Should have put it on, but anyway, she's just here. So she says hello. So this Australian media personality. Back to the story. So I'm reading about her, and in just sort of offhand remark that she makes in this article that I'm reading, where she jokingly said that she could drink quite a lot of champagne, and she said it, as if it was some sort of achievement. And I read that, and I thought, well, it's not. It's not an achievement at all. It's actually completely the opposite. Helen says hello, Emma. Helen says hello. Do you want to get up there? Sorry, just get this. Do you want to sit there? Do you want to sit there? There you go. You can sit there if you want. She wants to sit on top of the printer. I have my helmet in the road. So, she said she could drink quite a lot of champagne as if it was some sort of achievement, and it's not an achievement at all. It is quite the opposite. It's actually a lack of self-control with disastrous long-term effects. I started thinking about these long-term effects that the lack of that sort of lack of self-discipline has on us, and it's not a pretty sight. Because here was yet another person who is obviously unable to control her senses. And rather than learn self-control, she makes a joke about her addiction. And that, to me, is one of the saddest behaviours around. Venice is laughing. I'm pretty sure you're probably laughing about Uma Cat. So I'm not impressed by someone's ability to be led astray by their mind. That's not an achievement at all. Because when you follow your mind, you become a slave to your senses. And where does that lead you? Well, it leads you down a path of basically darkness and misery, where you're unable to resist any temptation. It's completely opposite to the path of light and happiness that the universe wishes for us. Okay, just looking at comments there. So what impresses me the most is actually self-control. Somebody with self-control, because this self-control brings wonderful qualities of kindness, awareness, humility, courage, empathy, charity, morality, modesty, peacefulness, and wisdom. And these are rare qualities in today's world, but these rare qualities are priceless to me. Controlling your mind allows you to hear your heart. There is always going to be a struggle for attention between the mind's lies and the heart's truth. And Matt, thank you for joining in, and Jeanette, thank you for joining in. So to control one's mind is to be aware of the importance of it, to understand that without discipline, we cannot achieve spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical health. We've been led to believe that if something feels good, we should just do it. We should be spontaneous, free of restraint, that our happiness comes from just doing anything at any time. But rather than finding happiness, we end up chasing our tail, and sadly, we become weak-willed and easily distracted. Matt says, evening, Mr. Harry. Hope you had an amazing day, brother. I did, sir, and I look forward to catching up with you on Wednesday. And Venice says, true. Control of yourself is wonderful. And Matt says, very true. Very true, bro. Yes. Anastasia says, showing love and patience in the face of hostility is what impresses her the most. Beautiful. Beautiful. That really beautiful. We end up chasing our tail, and sadly we become weak-willed and easily distracted. We become unable to focus on anything long enough to achieve goals in our work, our relationships, or our health. A lack of self-discipline and commitment arising from always following our ever-changing mind only leads to an inability to achieve long-term goals. We give up on things at the drop of a hat as soon as they become hard. Imagine neglecting your studies or your work every time your mind says, let's party. Or neglecting your diet every time you saw a vegan ice cream. Sounds like me. Or your relationship every time you saw someone else that you thought was more attractive. And hello, Yana. Thank you for watching. Where was I? It's not intelligent at all to be led astray. It's wise to learn restraint and discipline, to learn how to resist our mind's temptations. In other words, this is the complete opposite of the way that the world operates today. When you start looking at the way the world operates and the messages that are sent out through the media and so forth, you know, where the media and advertisers are always telling us that we should just, you know, let it hang loose and just do whatever we want. So our mind tempts us through our senses, telling us 1,000,000 times a day that we need to follow its desires for us to be happy. But studies have shown that younger generations expect to achieve goals without actually putting in any hard work. They expect things handed to them as if they're magically entitled to it. The only thing that anyone is actually magically entitled to is universal love. which we're all beautifully and magically entitled to. So rates of suicide, depression, and violence continue to climb simply because the shadows that we're chasing don't bring actual happiness. They bring a temporary distraction of sense gratification, but our deeper need for spiritual love goes unfulfilled. So we have a society of people endlessly running around chasing their tails in the hope that the next distraction will be the one that they're looking for. It won't be. You can't satisfy a spiritual need with material food. You just end up greatly disappointed, feeling lost, empty, and bitter. Yanya, thank you for joining, and Natasha, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. So I'm not impressed by what you do for a job, or for how much alcohol you can drink before passing out, or how much food you can eat in one go, or how many sexual partners you've had, because any fool can do that. And it's usually the fools that do. What impresses me is how kindly and compassionately you treat others, and how well you treat yourself, how well you understand the meaning of life, which is to accept universal love, how well you resist the temptations of Maya, the material illusion around us, by transforming those temptations into a higher goal of spiritual achievement. You may fail in your endeavor every day, but it's your desire to succeed in the things that really matter that impresses me. Anastasia says, yes, showing restraint and having self-control is a beautiful quality of character to have, sometimes needs to be learnt. Especially, yeah, well said, Anastasia, and especially in an environment, a society with peer pressure, with advertising pressure, with everything around us telling us that the coolest thing to do is the opposite of that. That the coolest thing to do is to reject any sense of control and authority, and any sort of conditioning, and any sort of anything that's telling us what to do. It's ironic that the message that is portrayed today is that it's cool to not follow any established routines or whatever. But that's a message also being given to us that people are following. You see what I'm saying there? It's really like, does anyone get that? They're like saying, oh, well, I'm rebelling against authority by doing whatever I want. It's like, well, you're not actually doing whatever you want at all. Your mind is saying, do this, and you go off that way. Then saying, do that, and you go off that way. So you've got no control. You've actually got the opposite of what you think you have. You're actually in a worse state. And it's really, it's ironic. You look at this society, so-called freedom that people think brings happiness, and so-called sort of like liberation or whatever, and you say it's upside down. It's backwards. It's actually like, no, it's not bringing you freedom at all. You're actually more controlled, and you don't even recognize it, because your mind is controlling you so much that you can't have a single thought to do something of yourself without it being sort of like dragging you in this direction or that direction. Venice says, inner happiness we must strive for, not food, drink, TV, etc. Exactly, Venice. Got to stop watching commercial TV, get it out of your life. I got a TV over there that I can't remember the last time I actually watched TV on it. So commercial anything, yes, definitely. It's really scary if I'm at somebody's place and they have a TV on, which doesn't happen that often, and I see a commercial and I just think, wow, the programming in this is just, it's scary. So I want to finish off what what I was saying there, that let others chase the illusionary rainbow of endless money, or the most satisfying job, or the perfect body, but realize that no one gets off this planet alive. The wise ones realize this early on, and they set their sights on doing something about it. Be still, meditate, and connect with the universal truth in your heart. It will guide you home. So that is my mess. Yes, that's funny. Jana mentions Eckhart Tolle, because I'm posting something straight after this live stream, which is a quote actually from him, which is, much suffering, much unhappiness arises when you take each thought that comes into your head for the truth. So that might have even, was that the quote you were thinking of, Jana? Because that was the quote of his that I've got there, and I'm going to attach it to this thing that I'll be publishing after this live stream. And Venice says, it sure is scary. And it actually really is scary, Venice, because you're talking about commercial television, commercial anything, but what about the whole programming that's actually portrayed, the image of where we supposedly get our happiness, and how we are cool, you're happy if you're cool, sort of thing, where we supposedly get it from, that's portrayed through movies and music and advertisements, as we were saying earlier, that is just so far off the track, and actually leads us, instead of into a state of freedom, it's the complete opposite of that. It's actually not only a hindrance, but it's actually like a prison. It's a prison of the mind. So it's not a freedom at all. And this is something I noticed, especially noticed when I was a teenager, late teens, early 20s, and I started hanging around with people a bit more, because I'd sort of lived a pretty sheltered life up to that time, and hadn't really noticed it so much. But I started hanging around with a few people that were sort of like, at the time, I was actually thought, wow, I'd love to be like this, where they sort of, they're spontaneous. They don't have to think about and prepare and plan things. They just spontaneously do things. And I thought, wow, that must be wonderful to do that and not care about the consequences. Years later, I realized that what I was actually seeing, this spontaneousness, where they just say, oh, you want to go down and let's get something to eat, or let's get something. That wasn't a spontaneousness coming from freedom. That was a spontaneousness coming from an inability to control their mind, from the fact that they were actually oppressed by their mind, and that if they didn't follow that temptation, if they, their mind saying, oh, go and get something to eat, if they didn't do it, they would actually start to stress out and start to, become angry or anxious or whatever. So Venice says, yes, materialism, don't get me started on shopping centers. Oh, yeah. Well, I've never actually in my life ever put up a Christmas tree. So, that it's just like, why would I, So, that sort of thing is never really, I don't fall into those traps or those, those social norms or whatever, So it's really important to look at the way that the world is, that it's been described in spiritual terms as a perverted reflection of the truth. And this is actually what it is that what we see on the surface is actually the truth distorted to the point where it's of no real use or benefit to us. So in other words, something that we can all relate to, relationships, what we seek, why we so strongly desire a relationship is because we all desire to love and be loved. And that comes from our deepest, most core value, spiritual value of universal loving connection. But in the material world, it gets completely distorted out of, choosing a partner because the way they look, it's very surface level, it's very material. And then, if we find them attractive physically, then we look for qualities beyond that makes it seem like we chose them because the qualities were that they had good communication skills or could cook well or something like that. But the reality is, if we're honest with ourselves, most people admit that we choose our partners on a very superficial level because of how they look, and that applies across the board with most things. We buy cars because of how they look. We buy clothes because of how we look in them. We buy a mobile phone because we like the way it looks. We are very, very form over function people instead of function over form, and very, very superficial, and everything is just upside down, reversed, and we just don't look at depths. Anastasia says, staying focused and control where there is turmoil around. It's a fantastic quality, Anastasia, isn't it? It's a really, really, I admire that greatly, that inner strength to be at peace in yourself, to be connected with your heart, and can be chaos all around you, but you yourself are centered and focused and unhindered and uninfluenced by it, because you're at peace within yourself. And that is a sign, you know, of a person that's really, really knows where it's at. We don't see it often because society tends to show us a lot of people that basically you look at them the wrong way and they just go, what's wrong with you? What do you mean by that? You know, just like people so not at peace that they can't even handle a person looking at them the wrong way. So that's the sort of society we live in. But occasionally, rarely, we come across somebody that has the ability to just is so at peace in themselves, that has the ability to realize that the things happening around them are happening around them, and are not necessarily connected with them. It's and did you see that? There goes that Uma cat tail. She's going to the other side now. Let's see. Venice says, I agree. And yes, Larissa says Christmas trees are pagan worship to Baal, and yes. And Asha says, yes, I think it's natural to be attracted on surface to an extent, but it's not everything though. We need balance. Yes, yes. We need to understand that what we're seeing through here is such a limited way of looking at the world. And I saw a graph the other day that just showed how limited it is with what we see with our senses. And it is just such a absolute, on the scale of energy levels and what can be detected through ultraviolet, infrared, microwaves, all of that. What we see is so limited. It's laughable how limited it is, and it's laughable how easily fooled we are. And there is a series I highly recommend you watching on Netflix called Brain Games. Highly recommend it. It doesn't take long. Like, I think within the first episode, within the first couple of minutes of the first episode, you will already be going, wow, okay, how did that happen? What Brain Games does constantly when I watch it, for me, is shows me how easily fooled we are, how absolutely easily fooled, even when we are looking for it, and when we're expected, when we're primed and told, okay, watch for this because something's going to happen here. We just have, we just got, when we rely on our senses, we are so dumb. We are so easily fooled. The only sense that we can rely on is universal truth in our heart. That's the only thing we can rely on. You rely on these or these or this or this or this, the touch. You can be in 30 seconds, you know, just bang like that. Watch Brain Games. You'll see what I mean. Every episode, I just go, that is amazing. I was looking for the trick there and I still got fooled by it. So, yeah. So really, you're doing yourself and everyone around you a disservice if you're relying on your senses to any degree at all, because your mind takes in what your limited senses collect. It's a computer, it takes it in, and then it forms a decision. And this is why we get these insane conspiracy theories and ideas. You know, I won't go down that track because somebody will pop up and say, oh no, that's wrong, you know, so I won't mention some of them, but you know, I do post about them. But you just get people mentally speculating, just going down a track. It's like, wow, how did you come up with that? You know, it's so easily disproved. Venice says, I need to live in a temple in the mountains for at least a year to balance me out from all the limited thinking from past years. Well, yes, and Venice, I think you probably do daily, I think you do daily meditation, you know, and yoga and that. So these are things that, you know, most of us don't have the opportunity to remove ourselves from society. So the trick is to be able to find that balance, and this is the harder thing to do, to find the balance while still being in the material world with all its distractions. And I really admire somebody that can do that. Asha says, I feel like you can feel and connect with people's energy. They become more attractive or less attractive when you see their inner core come out to the surface. So as you know them and grow, give a chance, they become a whole different being to what you first saw. So beautifully said, Asha. I have experienced that, and yes, it is spot on, so spot on. My appreciation for someone, when I get past the surface level and I start connecting with their heart, and I actually, I am so appreciative and impressed by someone who can express their vulnerability and their struggles, and they don't see it as a weakness. They see it as lessons. They see it as part of something that they need to learn from. So in other words, their false ego is not so strong that they're afraid to express this, right? Their false ego is under a degree of control, and they're able to express, you know, the things that they've experienced, that they've struggled with. And I am so impressed when somebody can communicate that, can share that, can trust somebody with that. That is, for me, brings a heartfelt connection that's pretty much indescribable in words. It's that trust to do that with someone else that I really superbly appreciate. Asha says, I think intuition can see clear if you trust it, regardless what you see, you just know, or a series of events confirms it later. That's true. That's true. We always have to have, Asha, we always have to have faith and trust in universal procedure, because we can either fight against it, or we can accept that things are going to happen the way that they're meant to happen. Brain Games, Yana asks, yes, Brain Games on Netflix. You might even be able to watch episodes. You can watch clips of it on YouTube, actually. You mightn't be able to watch the whole episode, but you could go on and see a 2 or 3 minute clip of Brain Games, Yana, that will just give you an example of how easily fooled we are. And I always keep this in my mind, where especially posts come up with people with conspiracy theories about different things. And I think, mate, you've got, you know, you think you know what's going on. You've got no idea. No idea at all. Really, you have senses so limited, and you've somehow concluded from that, you know, this is the way things are. It's like, no, it's a cosmic mind wank. You really have no idea. If we're not connecting with our heart, we're just lost. We're just blind. So Kathleen says, agree with you entirely, Harry. And yes, Denise says she does yoga and meditation. And yes, Larissa, the gut is connected to the brain. That is correct. Although that connection may not be very strong for a lot of people. And it may not be functioning in a holistically correct way. So that was the sort of the points I wanted to get across, that that what impresses me the most is self-control. That's what impresses me the most, and the person's understanding of the importance of self-control. That really, a person that understands to not fall for the lie that we've been told, through the illusionary energy of Maya, the material energy in the world, a person that doesn't fall for that, a person that's wise enough to see beyond that, and wise enough to be in a state of self-control so that they can resist and transmute material temptations when they come up, and they can transmute them into a spiritual achievement or a spiritual behavior. Anastasia says, what does universal mean? Sorry, not used to this language. Oh, Anastasia, I use, because it's more acceptable for people when they're watching my live streams or reading my posts. It's more acceptable. Like, instead of using the word God, I say universal, the universe, or universal truth, because using the word God, some people will turn off. They have a very conditioned, and sometimes understandably conditioned, interpretation of the word God, which may have come from their upbringing through religion or through their experiences. So sometimes when we hear the word God, a lot of us turn off, whereas to say universal love is a much more accepting thing, because it doesn't necessarily have a negative connotation, because religion has for a lot of people, myself included, has a negative connotation. I follow a spiritual path. I don't follow a religious path. To be clear, spirituality is a personal journey that we take, where we develop a relationship within, where we go within and develop a relationship within, where we connect our heart with a higher wisdom that is also within, which I call universal truth, a universal love that we all have inside. That's a spiritual journey. That's you know, what is the most important thing we should be doing. Religion is a man-made control system. It's a fear-based control system that keeps people in a degree of control, which is normally not particularly healthy. It does maybe achieve some goals, but yes, it's a different thing to the true freedom that actually comes from following a spiritual path. Following a spiritual frees you from the control of your mind if you're following that spiritual path with a good, strong devotion. That's true freedom. Whereas today we live in a world where everything's upside down, and it's telling you you'll get your freedom by following your mind, but it doesn't say it as clearly as that. It just says, be free, do this, do whatever you want, right? You know, if it feels good, do it, right? Well, that's just following your mind endlessly, and it's the reverse of a true spiritual path, which says you will achieve your happiness and your freedom when you are in a state of self-control and you can hear your heart then, instead of your mind endlessly chattering. A cosmic mind wank, Larissa says. Yeah, it's a terminology I like to use. I got it from somewhere. Align with your soul, Venice says. I love that. That's a beautiful 4-word. That would make a nice meme, actually. And Larissa says, sometimes when we hear the word vegan, it has a negative connotation. Again, these are... that is possible, but remember, that's a relative truth. All of these are relative truths. All of these are perceptions that we, or interpretations that we put onto things based on our upbringing, our all these different factors that have influenced us in our journey, so that we see something a certain way. And another way of describing it is that if there's a mountain and I stand on one side of it and you stand on the other side of it, the way you see the mountain, the way you describe the mountain is going to be different. You're going to have a different view of it to what I have. It's the same mountain, and your truth is your truth, and my truth is my truth, because I see this side of the mountain, you see the other side of the mountain. Who's right, who's wrong? We're both right, and in a way we're both wrong. It's a relative truth. I see a certain side of the mountain, the other certain side of the mountain. It doesn't actually make it right or wrong or good or bad. So we need to get away from those sort of labels, and away from labels of judgment, which, you know, when we point a finger at someone, 3 fingers point back at us. So that doesn't help either. So we get away from that, but we just, and we get to a point of understanding that people are seeing different aspects of the same thing, because we're at a different level, we're at a different point in our journey. We're standing in a different place, basically. So I'm standing on my side of the mountain, and you're standing on your side of the mountain, and somebody else is standing on another side of the mountain. So we're seeing different parts of the mountain. So it's all correct and relative to us. And somewhere down the track, when we stand in a different place, when we move again, we will see it differently, and we will appreciate it differently, and hopefully we will look back and have a sense of gratitude for being, as Venice says, just different perceptions. We will have a sense of gratitude for seeing things differently. And one of the benefits of getting older is, for me, has been older in this body, I should say, has been being able to see or have a sense of gratitude and a sense of peace around that as well, for the lessons that have come up again and again, and seeing new aspects of those lessons, and realizing that the way that they played out in my life was exactly the way that they had to play out for me to learn the lesson involved, for me to face the struggles, for me to grow from that. So that gratitude comes from acceptance, understanding and acceptance of universal love, having faith that everything is happening perfectly. And there's a really good example I want to give. I'm going to start to wind this up shortly. There's a really good example I want to give related around that, and that is that you know, the thing about destiny and fate that's just come up in relation to how things always happen the way they are meant to happen. We have free will, but the free will that we have in relation to this is that we have the free will to react the way we choose to react to events happening. But it doesn't mean we have the free will to change the event happening. So our power is in how we react to it happening, not in trying to change the event. In fact, trying to change something outside of ourselves can bring immense frustration, anger, just a complete waste of time. It can basically destroy us. And a really good example of this, of how things happen the way they're meant to, was an example that I brought up before in live streams, but if you haven't heard it, it's a true story, and it's just very briefly that it was a person that tried to commit suicide. It was a man. He tried to commit suicide, and he actually jumped off a high-rise building. So his intention was to kill himself. Now, the universe decided it wasn't his time to go. So despite the fact that he had wanted to kill himself, he jumped off a high-rise building, which for most people would probably kill them. He landed on the roof of a car parked in the street below. He broke both his legs, but he did survive. But here's the interesting thing. Sitting in the car was a lady. She was killed. So her time, she was sitting innocently in a car on the side of the street, her time to go was up, and there was nothing she could do about it. That's how the universe works. His time to go was not up, and there was nothing he could do about it. So it's a really profound example. I read that story years ago, and I just went, that is incredible. But it really brings home how things happen the way they're meant to happen, and that our power, and this is a really wise thing to learn, that our power is in how we react instead of trying to control. We control the way we react to things, not trying to control the situation. Trying to control the situation will just bring you so much pain and lack of peace. And look around the world and you'll see that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to control everything except themselves. It's backwards. Gay says, compassion and that action put into action for the animals and earth, no matter what, even if you're the only one fighting for them, are what I admire most in people. Beautiful, Gay, and agreed, definitely. Let's see, and what's Kathleen saying? Hang on, I'm just clicking on the little things here. Understand what you say, Harry. Although brought up in the Catholic Church by choice, I also have a deep feeling and understanding of how to feel in a spiritual way. Perhaps would be frowned on by some brought up in the same way. However, no one is right and no one is wrong. Acceptance with no judgment and appreciating everyone and how they see things at the time. Beautifully said, Kathleen. And you know, it's really good what the point you bring up there. Acceptance with no judgment. You know, it comes back to understanding that all living beings, and I've said this before, and we always need constant reminder of this, myself most especially, all living beings are at their core level perfect spirit souls, and have always been and always will be perfect spirit souls. However, that doesn't mean our actions are anything even closely approaching perfect, because we chase illusions, we chase shadows, we get lost, and we go off in directions that cause us a lot of harm, and also can create situations where other people react with a lot of hurt or whatever to the situation. Just remember, we can't hurt someone else, but they can react with hurt to what we've done if they don't see the bigger picture and understand what's happening. So it's very important to realize that on the core level, we are universally loved and unconditionally loved always by the universe, and we are spirit souls that are perfect, but our actions are imperfect. So knowing that, that brings a state of acceptance, because we realize that we, the soul, are not our actions. So we separate the two, and I've talked about this before, and it's one of the most powerful things that I've ever discovered in being able to forgive and accept myself and others, in understanding that myself and everyone else are perfect, but the things that we have done are a result of being lost along and heading off in the wrong direction, going down dark alleys. And, this causes a lot of distress for ourselves and for others. Or I should say, others react with a lot of distress to these things. And so when we separate the person from their actions, then we easily are able to forgive the person, and we have a great degree of empathy and compassion for the person. And that includes people that have done the most atrocious things, because if we don't look at people this way, what ends up happening is we become bitter because we have to hang on to an anger judgment towards them that only hurts us. So we're hanging on to the hot coal that we want to throw at them, but it's burning us. So Anastasia says, for some people and myself, having faith in God helps them have that self-control. Definitely. Religion is different to having a relationship with God for me. So is that my universal, you were saying? Yes. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Faith is the, most important one, or one of the most important things. Faith in understanding, you've said faith in God. I could easily have said that. Faith in understanding that everything is perfectly controlled and planned by God. All the things that we say are good things happening in the world, and all the things that we judge as bad things happening in the world are all meant to happen and are all perfectly timed. And when we realize that we ourselves are perfectly imperfect or imperfectly perfect, whichever way you want to say it, then you understand how all the pieces start to fit together. And yes, Venice says it causes frustration and anger. What I was saying earlier, to be trying to control anything, and this is something that I've come across many times in myself and still do, unfortunately. Larissa says forgiveness is key. Definitely. But reiterating that anytime that we think that we know better and that we should, and look, I do this all the time. You only have to read some of my posts and you'll see how much that I try to influence people to go in a certain direction, because I think it will be more helpful for them, and I think it'll be more compassionate for, obviously, it'll be more helpful for the animals, because I think that, it will get them away from hurting animals. So I try to control in a way, I try to influence in a way people's directions. This is why I often post about ditching the dairy, trying to influence people that are maybe only vegetarian to look at what they're doing. I mean, to look at the fact that they're actually contributing to the slaughter of 21 million male calves a year worldwide, because they're still consuming dairy. To look at that, that's just one of the many things, one of the many horrendous results of them just following dairy. And I'm not even talking about the meat industry. Add that into it, add into the 8 million land animals an hour that are being slaughtered because we can't control our senses, because our mind is saying bacon and off we go. It's very, I try to present different angles. I always come up with different ways of trying to present this. I very strongly, as people will be quite well aware that follow my posts, very strongly try to influence fellow vegans